Amazon Prime Day is live, but sellers are warning that there may be fewer items in stock as a result of these supply chain snafus. Let's get some perspective from Annandale Capital founder George C. and Market Gauge Group Managing Director Michelle Schneider on how this could all impact e-commerce giants and their customers as well. I mean, this is a huge issue, George. It's hitting industries. It's hitting the big box retailers. It's hitting small industries everywhere. A girlfriend of mine was telling me it's hitting the bicycle industry. I mean, just everything is getting backed up because of the pandemic, people not working, and it doesn't seem to be getting better yet.
Well, Jackie, you put the car in the garage for months and months and months, and then you take it out and expect to go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and it misfires and kind of curves over to the right a little more than you'd like, and you're surprised by that. And really, it's absolutely no surprise. The supply chains were basically dormant for quite some period of time, and now they're white hot, and there's a need for all this stuff to flow through the supply chains efficiently and effectively, and they're just not. It's going to take a while to recoup, and then you've got inflationary pressures beyond that, so people are getting squeezed on the margins and having to reprice their goods. So it's a lot to juggle all at once.
Michelle, when you look at this, when do you think things will be back to normal? There's part of, the school of thought that they'll never be quite as normal as they were again because the pandemic has just shifted our consumption patterns and all of this online shopping that we're sort of just going to have to readjust a little.
Well, yes, definitely we can say more of a new normal than back to the old normal. But in terms of Amazon, just looking at that and the supply chain, I mean, that is totally real. But what's so interesting about Amazon in general is that the 24-hour delivery has already stopped even before Prime Day. When I order stuff on Amazon now, I have to wait 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 days to get something, even though I'm an Amazon Prime member. And so with all of these sellers that are saying that they're going to have tough time with delivery because of the supply chain disruption, and you've got the Suez Canal blocked up, you've got a couple of big ports in China. Mm-hmm. When will that go away? I think it's going to take a bit longer here because it's not just the only problem. It is definitely illustrates the entire problem that we have, which is just the whole cost of raw materials going up, the shortage of raw materials going up, the demand outweighing the supply, and then you add the shipping problems and those costs going up. So I think it's going to be an interesting Prime Day situation for Amazon here. Last time they made $10.4 billion. They're projecting $7.3 billion, and we'll see if they meet that goal.
It will be interesting to watch. And George, those numbers are really important. Look, Amazon was seen as a savior during the pandemic, right? We all were stuck at home and we were ordering packages and we didn't care if they came in 2 days or 10 days as long as they came and we were able to get the goods that we needed. However, now that things are up and running and people's expectations have changed, their expectations for Prime Day have changed too. If they don't necessarily get the items when they were expecting them, they may be disappointed.
They will be for a while. I do think things are going to get back to normal. I think the wonderful thing about capitalism is it's ruthlessly efficient at maximizing profits and maximizing speed of delivery, and Amazon's a genius at that. But it will take some time, and I really think in the long term the inflationary threat is bigger than correcting the supply chain situation, because I think it's going to be really hard for these wholesalers to pass through their price increases to retailers and retailers pass them through to consumers. I think there's going to be a lot of pain along that supply chain in terms of pricing as we go forward. It's going to take a long time to reset because I don't think the inflationary pressures we're seeing are done. I think they're going to keep coming.
Okay, that's a really good point because I think a lot of market participants would agree with you, and they are worried about the kinds of inflation that we'll see, how long it's going to last. So Michelle, I'll go back to you because you really broke this out, very nicely for us, looking at some of those specific industry groups. When you see the price of the raw materials go up, the only thing that could happen is that it gets passed on to the consumer. But at a certain point, the consumer is not going to be able to afford those prices and maybe isn't going to be spending as much. They tighten up. When you see that happen, not just on Amazon, but at restaurants and across the board with spending, all of a sudden you have a bigger problem for the economy.
Yes, and I certainly totally agree with Gary, but I also will say that I think the stagflation scenario is something we've been talking about for a very, very long time. I am around long enough to have seen the last inflation cycle and the stagflation happen, and even before my time, there was a stagflation period that went on for a very long time from the late 60s until we got into a hyperinflation, and then finally after that we got into more of a growth. And I think that all of these factors that you just mentioned, Jackie, are real. These raw materials, you can't just say, wow, we need more raw materials and take them off the shelf. They grow, they mine, and there has been a real deliberate cutback before the pandemic because there was such a glut and low prices, and you have that factor too. So when you add it all up, I do think it's going to pinch the consumer. It already is. Anybody who goes shopping now realizes they're going to spend a lot more, and I see that continuing at least for another year, maybe two.
And George, I just want to make the point, because we've talked about it in different aspects on this show, where we're getting the raw materials from as well, right? Inflation sends the prices up, and that's part of the problem in the supply chain. But a lot of the problem is something President Trump was trying to do away with, was getting a lot of our supplies from China. And this almost makes it impossible not to, right?
That's exactly right, and I would focus on something more high-tech too, Jackie, which is Taiwan Semiconductor, which manufactures most of the semiconductors we utilize in all our high-tech components and automobiles and everything else. We've seen a severe shortage in that, and there's a major effort on the part of the government to bring manufacturing capacity for semiconductors back to the U.S. so we don't have a bottleneck there, which is very possible, especially with China rattling the saber at Taiwan right now. It jeopardizes that whole situation. So there's lots of things like that going on, lots of cross currents, and it's very difficult to manage effectively right now. Yeah,
you can see what the semiconductor shortage is doing right now to us here at home. They're basically, semiconductor chips are in everything that we use, some component of them, even in cars. You wouldn't imagine it, so it would be a big impact. And we need to work on some things. Trump administration was doing it. Doesn't seem like this administration is. George, Michelle, great to see you both. Thank you for your insight, and thanks for laying this out. It's such an important, complicated issue for people to understand.
Thank you, Jackie.
Coming up, the 2021